Hey everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how in Unity you can make it so that your game object material scales correctly with the object. So instead of stretching like this, which is not very convenient if I wanted to manipulate this object, shrink it, move it over, right? I have to set the tiling again on this. Instead, we can make it look like this. Uh, See now when I scale it, it generally looks the same, right? I can make it any size, and I don't have to retile anything like that. So let's jump in it. How do we actually accomplish this? So in order to do this, I'll show you the sneak peek. If you want to just do this and you already know how to make a shader yourself, here's the way you do it. You can you can pause the video and take a look at that. But to actually make this happen, and I just learned this, so I thought I would share this with everyone. What I can do is make a new shader. So in my project, my folder, I'll just create a shader graph. And shader graph is this really powerful tool that lets you make shaders. You don't have to do any coding for the shader. So it's a visual way to create shaders. That can be really powerful. You can make animations. You can make all kinds of different stuff. So in this case, URP, that's Universal Render Pipeline. And I'm just going to pick an unlit shader graph. I think that you could pick the lit one. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is here on these, to be honest, but go ahead and just pick an unlit shader graph, give it a name, my new shader, right? And this will open up your new shader. Now, what do we have in here? We have a basic stuff. There's some vertex stuff. There's a fragment with the base color. And how do we actually get to where we want to be? So the first thing I'll do is right click and create a new node. And I can make an object node. And this gives me access to various things about the object, including the scale. So we're going to use this scale to eventually try and feed something into this base color, okay? So I'm just going to move these out of the way. So I can take this scale and I can just drag it out here. That'll let me make a new node. And in this case, I'm going to split. Yeah. So I'm splitting the scale. Now I have, it says RGBA. This is just XYZ. And you can see it says 3 here because this is a vector 3 coming in. And this will map to this RGB. This is going to be XYZ. And split just doesn't know, what units we're dealing with here. So it says RGB, but just know that this is X, Y, and Z. So we're then going to take our X, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a multiply. And so in this case, now I'm going to come over here to we call this, I guess, the blackboard. And this one, we're going to add a new float. And we're just going to call this, we'll call it scale factor X, right? And I'll take this float and I'll attach it into the A. So now what we're doing is we're multiplying scale factor X by the X value from the scale. And I have that value here, which will connect to something. But we'll do the same thing with Y. So XY, and you could use Z. It depends on what you're trying to do here. But for my case, I really only want to scale X and Y. I don't care about scaling Z. So I will go ahead and do the same thing here. We'll do multiply. And we'll make another float here, scale factor Y. Okay, and we'll plug this one in here. Perfect. So now I have both of these, and what I'm going to do is combine these into a vector 2. Let's create a vector 2 here. And I'm going to take the X and go here, and the Y and go here. So now I've combined these into a vector 2. I'm just going to move these out of the way. Okay, so I have my vector 2 that I've just created. So then the next step is to make a tiling and offset node. So if I search for tiling, we get a tiling and offset. And I can go ahead and take the output of my vector 2 and make that the tiling. Okay, so now this thing that we just created is the tiling on this. All right, I'm going to move these out of the way again. So now finally we'll make a sample texture. Sample texture. And this is going to let me actually put my texture on there, right? And I'm going to take the output from my tiling here. I'm going to put it on the UV for the sample texture. Okay, and then I want to be able to apply a texture here. I'm going to need to make one more variable on my blackboard. We're going to call this texture, it's going to be a texture type, texture 2D, and we'll call this texture, and we'll make this the input for our texture here. Okay, so then finally we can take the these things which we started with. These are like our base stuff. And we're going to take our RGBA and we're going to slap that as the base color. So this is the whole shader now, and this should effectively do what we want. Let's look at how to actually apply this. First we have to save it. Let that save. And now let's try and actually apply my new shader and look at configuring it on this wall that we have. So if I go to this wall and I set the shader for it to be my new shader, the first thing you're going to notice is it didn't work, right? Uh-oh. And I have a different quad for the top just because of the way I'm making this game, but that's fine. So how do we actually do this? Well, let's go ahead and see. The texture is already set to this wall, but these are 0. So let's set this to maybe 0.1. Okay, 0.1. Whoa, look at that. We've got some stuff. And so we can scale this a whole bunch, right? We can make this look however we want it to look. And in fact, you know, I've got it. I kind of just like the look of 0.1 and 0.1, right? Yeah, you know, maybe 0.1, maybe like that. I don't know, something like that. And we can do the same thing for our top. Again, this is just my new shader that we just made. And we do need to set this to 0.1, 0.1. That's fine for now. And so now you can see if I drag this around, it is now scaling. It's not stretching, it's automatically scaling. And so I can take this and like put it over here, right? And then I can like make another one and put it over here. And so now I have a little door, right? And I didn't have to go messing around with scaling or anything like that after modifying these assets. So I hope that really helps you. You can mess around with all kinds of different stuff. With this is again a really powerful tool. I'm only just learning about it now. So if you have any suggestions on how to improve this implementation, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.